none, motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Falco, second by Councillor Gilbert. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Water Master Plan, report to draft terms of reference. Staff put together a multi-page report, including a recommendation. Staff, is there any wish to add?
No, this time, Worship. Chair for answering questions.
Okay. Who wishes to start it out? Recognizing this is Councillor Colclough is handed out.
Yeah.
How about we mention
Maybe it would
it?
be nice to
Let's do that. Councillor Colclough.
Do you want to motion first, or?
No, we don't want to do that yet.
Okay. I read through, there's lots of good information. I think all the bones are here. I just think that the emphasis and the order need to be changed a bit. This was, well, doing the water master plan is essential for any community water system. This was really initiated by a need to look at providing people with water who aren't on the current system. And so what I've done is handed it out there. It's just a different order of doing things, a little different emphasis. I'll just walk through it. So step number one, of course, you're bringing on a consultant. First thing I need to do is get a snapshot of where things are at. So review the existing studies, reports, and plans. And that includes on water, the OCD, the zoning, to get a feel for the community, a snapshot of what's there now and what's proposed, currently at least. But the second step, I think, needs to prepare a communication strategy for the process. That should be the first thing, because a lot of this initiative is going to be based on feedback from the community. So the communication strategy is really important to have that up front. Then I think you go out and you do the needs assessment within the water service areas that are there, identified on the plans now and beyond. So basically, do a water needs analysis for the whole community. Who needs water, who wants water, and why. And then you do a preliminary conceptual plan of a water system that would service all of those people that have identified a desire or need to want water. Recognizing that in some cases it may be that it's not economically viable to get there. But you start off with a conceptual plan to meet the needs of the community. And then you look at assessing the existing infrastructure to get water to its boundaries and to its perimeter, and then you do a preliminary design or assessment on what it's going to take to get out to those new areas. So that gets you a preliminary design of the water system, you know what upgrading needs to be done, what extensions need to be done. Do cost estimates for that work, and this is all fairly high-level preliminary cost estimates. And then step 6, and there's some steps beyond this, but step 6 would be develop a strategy to provide water to each of those areas. So if you have a group that's out there, and a reasonable number of people from that area have come forward and said, yes, I want to be considered, recognizing this dependent cost, but what are the different ways that we can get water to that new neighborhood? Going this way, that way, building on existing infrastructure. Is there development proposed between here and there that could carry some of the costs or extend the type stuff? So what that gets us then is, rather than just saying it's going to cost X number of dollars to get a pipe from here there, you're looking at all the ways that you might achieve that. And it might be through a development that's between them. It might be through, eventually it might be through a change in the OCP and the zoning that would be required to facilitate getting water to a neighborhood that really needs it. And so, while it's always said that you don't let servicing dictate development, you always hear that. And in some cases, for us to be able to provide water to a certain neighborhood, we may say, okay, we need the water line from here to here. It's quite a ways out. We're also going to need to loop it back, because ideally you want your water system to loop. So we may look more favorably on development in one particular area for that reason. Not the only reason that it may be considered. So to recap that, it's get a snapshot of what's here now, review the existing studies, prepare a communication strategy, go into the community, find out who's interested, who needs and wants water, develop a preliminary network of pipes that are provided to them, develop some cost estimates to get there, and then look project strategies to get there. Then you're in a position to go back, ultimately go back to those neighborhoods and say, realistically, here's what it's going to cost to get water to you. Are you willing to pay something in that order of magnitude? And if yes, then you get to the next level. So it's a little different sequence than what's in the current RFP.
Councillor Gizzard.
Question through the mayor to staff. I'm looking at Councillor Colclough's number 5, develop cost estimates of service potential areas. Now, so my question to staff is, what sort of person or company or outfit is your ideal candidate, and would they be able to do number 5 as well? Because that sounds like that's an engineering function, some sort of financial person, but certainly in engineering to develop cost estimates. And is that the person is that who we're looking for with this RFP?
Sure, I can try to answer that one. I think with a consultant, there's always the option for that consultant to hire sub-consultants like an engineering firm or something of that nature. The likelihood of having an engineering firm come in and do this kind of work is minimal. Usually it's a planning firm that comes in and then they utilize an engineering firm to come up with some of those costs associated works.
Okay. So I guess my question, and I'll wait to hear from Councillor Colclough, is this too big an overview, or would this be good within what we have here? I'm looking at scope of work. Are you talking about just simply putting your overview plan into where it says scope of work in this report? Could it be that simple?
Well, it would require staff going back into the RFP and moving things around. So it would definitely need to be revised to do that. But for me, this is what I see as sort of a more logical progression of getting the right information, to be able to make the next decisions, to be able to make the next decisions. And I agree with what staff has said there. I think the most important, like you put an RFP out like this, and I used to be involved in Boston where you would get 2 or 3 different consultants together to meet the needs of the requirements. So you would have an engineer, you'd have a planner, you may have, depending on what the project is. And, the company that's going to be doing the communication strategy here is the most important. Grunting out the numbers and preliminary design of the water system map. There are lots of good engineers who can do that. But what you really want to look for is somebody that's really good at the communications strategy and implementation, so that the public feels that are being heard, they're being given the opportunity to provide the input that they want to provide.
Councillor Colclough. Sorry.
Close enough. I'll have a lot of questions through this, but speaking to the presentation here by Councillor Colclough, I like it. To me, this is a more logical flow of evolving through this. When I looked at the deliverables in the RFP, I had some questions, concerns, but to me, this is a better definition of the deliverables that we'd be looking for. A question or comment that I have, though, is around the needs and wants assessment. It's a simple thing to do, but there's a lot of permutations to this. I'm going to jump to the WINS survey that was done. 13 people said poor quality, poor quantity. They need water. That's an easy one. There was 40 people that wanted it for fire protection. So that want changes based on economics. And so I think we need to highlight the fact that economics need to be part of this. The funding mechanism for the economics, though, can be a side exercise or flushed out. I don't know, but it's basically residents carrying the load themselves, government grants or some contribution from development thereof. There's a few options for what economics look like, but in my thinking, that has to ultimately relate back to the needs and wants assessment, because it's an iterative process. One more general one maybe before I stop is I think what we would like at the end of all this too is it's not a rigorous step-by-step roadmap. Step 1 do this, step 2 do this. There's a lot of decisions that are to be made in the near future, a number of them that are many years down the road. So it should be more of a general roadmap that highlights decision points to help us along. The economics is a good example. We think we're going to send it up to a certain area. Most of the people may want it for fire protection. We get the economics back in, we find that it's too expensive. It perhaps kills that area for water delivery. It's a roadmap to help guide us. We all have a piece of paper to show where we're going with this.
A couple of things. First off, I thought the water master plan was going to be a committee comprised of some residents on this. Is that still the plan, or is this strictly a hire a consultant now, and other than public consultation, the public's not involved? So there's my first question.
Through your worship, it is the water master plan was derived through the committee. The water task force dissolved, for lack of a better terminology, a few meetings ago, and it was replaced by hiring a consultant through the water task force, or sort of through the water master plan, and reaching out to the public as per our public consultation policy the council approved.
Okay, following up on that then, so where in here do we consult and inform the existing water users about what this is going to cost them? Because the non water rates are higher than ours. There's a whole bunch of costs in that water agreement that this, moving forward on this, depending on what certain people say, is going to have a direct cost impact on people in the water system right now. Where do they get that quantified, and where do they find out where their additional costs are going to be on all of this? Because if they're part of the community, they shouldn't just be downloaded on.
Mr. McCray?
Through your worship, there's several indications within the water master plan. 5.2 sub C, assess existing conditions from an area assessment, provide cost of servicing existing residents not connected to the district or municipal water system. So there does exist that. Again, because this is committee of the whole, should council push that additional items into this, staff are more than happy to put things in.
And then my last question is under the discussion, one of the things is which areas would have access to any new connections first? Well, is that going to be strictly based on a consultant's opinion, or, how is that going to be derived? There's a bit of a political influence in there too. So what criteria would they be using to determine who's first?
Through your worship, under phase 5.5, final draft recommendations, water master utility plan. Again, the consultant is going to go out to the community and doing those sensitive exercises with different pockets within the community. However, when the consultant provides his report to council, again, it's a consultant recommendation. Council is not bound to do anything that they do not wish to do. So while it's the recommendation, it's gone through months of studies, etc., council can say that.
And just on the cost side, 5.2C says provide cost to service existing residents. It doesn't just mean talking to existing residents not in the system. It's the broader cost need to be encompassed in that as well as the pipes and ground for each resident.
So, and that's what we need to make sure that we quantify the additional costs of getting their existing water right now, because obviously they're going to pay more for what they're already getting. And so the community needs to be aware of that.
Mr. McCray?
Sorry, just a broad term generalities to this. This is an operational matter that is before council. It's a request for proposal. The proponents are going to be bringing forward applications to staff for us to review. These are the high-level matters that exist. However, the proponents are going to have to show how they can provide these things, and that's what staff will be diving into next once this matter moves. It's much like the RFP that's gone out for the, or will be going out for the information technology system. It's much like the RFQ that has gone out for the audiovisual. It is, you need to prove proponent to us how you are going to reach out to the community, how you're going to accomplish these things. So just to make that very clear.
Is there a follow-up?
Yeah, just a follow-up, which is why I think we need to know in responding to people in one area, how it's going to impact people in another area that are currently on the system. So it has to be a comprehensive, complete report, not just one area or one group that's being serviced.
I just want to pick up on Councilor Golson's suggestions, and I agree completely. It's two key points there. One is it's an iterative process, and in all likelihood what it's going to do is it's going to identify what the triggers are, and that involves including things like the cost options, as you mentioned there, whether it's park grants or development or whatever. We'll end up with a proposed system for the community that meets everybody's needs, and there'll be an area up there, and these are the things that have to fall into place to get it there at a reasonable cost. People aren't willing to do it just for any cost. So, but there'll be another set of sequence of events that might have to happen to get it to a different area. And it's going to be when those things start to unfold that really make decisions. So we won't like to be able to say it's going to go there first and then there and then there. It's going to give us the tools to make those decisions when those things fall into place. Then picking up on Councillor Hain, I agree. Part of the thing here with the prepared communication strategy, I didn't write it down, but I assume that that would include, or could include, or should include, a committee made up of residents and advisory committee with people from a couple different areas, and that would be part of the communication strategy. I think that's critical to be able to get feedback from the community and get information out to the community.
And there are some people in certain areas, like for example, Roger Green in the Wood Acres area is very good at coordinating and getting information from that area, from one source as opposed to spread out the word. Councillor Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Building on what Councillor Coughlin just said, and what Councillor Crossley said previously, I agree. I think it is, to repeat the phrase, interesting in terms of, this is going to be developed according to a set of circumstances. It will depend on, as much as anything, on that feedback, on that input from community. So consultation, I think, across the community will be absolutely critical in establishing what the findings are and what the final product looks like. This is going to be a framework that will guide future decision making. It won't dictate future decision making. That's what the master plan is for. But the information it contains, to my mind, will actually help guide that process of deciding who, what, where, and when. And the input received from our residents across the district will be a huge factor in that. I believe, in fact, the committee that should be the most involved in the consultation process is the one sitting here. I think it should be council. To have representatives in different areas starts to fragment it. I think the residents of the community want to talk to council. They want to give their input to council, and I believe that we should be exploring. I think it is critical. I agree with you. The communication plan will be absolutely critical to the success or the quality of the final product. And we should be employing as many approaches, as many strategies as we possibly can to engage as many people as we possibly can across the district. I think we have a responsibility to make sure that people understand this concerns them, whether they are needing water now or whether they're an existing water user, because we're all the same taxpayer. And all of the decisions that we make will ultimately have consequences down the line for the economic picture. So I think communication is key. I think we should be using as many different innovative approaches as we can to get as much feedback and as much input from our residents as we possibly can. And I think if there is a situation where you're actually interfacing with the public, it should be these people sitting around the table, rather than having information fed back and channeled back through a third party. It doesn't make sense to me. I think the most efficient way, if you're actually interfacing directly with your residents, is to have us available. I've been through this process twice on a district-wide basis in terms of from Ladysmith all the way up to Mansfield. And in my past experience, people wanted to see and speak to and give feedback in the presence of the people who represented them. That has way more value than having little groups and committees who mean well and could do a fairly decent job. But the kind of information that I think that we are going to be collecting will be massive. Not as massive as I've seen in the past, because this is a small community, but it should be, a plethora of feedback that gives us a really good breakdown of what people want and what they're expecting from us. Not necessarily whether they want water or not, but what they expect from us as their decision makers.
Councillor Wilson.
Did the task force get killed? I thought we deferred it till the water master plan was in place, and then we'd review it.
I thought we put it into this.
Through your worship, that's staff's understanding was that the water task force itself had, pardon the phrasing on this, melded into this.
Yeah.
So the consultant is now filling the role working with the community, but there is no committee that has been brought into this endeavor.
Follow-up, Councillor Wilson?
No, it's another separate question.
For myself, there was a meeting there a month and a half, whatever ago, where basically I echoed what Councillor Neary was saying, that basically council to take the initiative. I think I used the word control at the time, and that's not really what I meant. Take the initiative with regards to the consultation and that sort of an aspect. How we interface, like I mentioned, Roger Green of Wood Acres area, how we interface with those groups is yet to be decided, because it's not a case of come to a council meeting sort of thing. I think we should be reaching out for that sort of information. And with regards to what Councillor Colclough put forward here, all the items cross-reference into the phases listed here. One of the things I do like is the greater emphasis on the communication strategy and needs assessment, whereas under this, under 5.1 phase 1, it's kind of one of the subsets of that, and I think that out front is something that the residents are greatly interested in that respect. So how it's phased, etc., provided it's in a usable format. I don't care what titles are on it. I don't care to a great degree. So whether it was Councilor Colclough's idea or staff's idea, like I said, the components are all there. It's just, from our standpoint, the communication strategy and needs assessment, I do like them being separately identified. Councilor Haney.
Could we add then on this outline that Bob gave us, Councillor Colclough gave us, this thing 5 and 6, 5.1, you choose. Develop cost estimates regarding servicing existing users in the water service area. Basically what the implications of all this will be on them.
Or even just adding that.
Yeah, just add that so we know between whether it's dropping water standards or changing to Nanaimo, just so the existing water users know what's in store. And then they'd also feel like they're part of the public consultation and process, right? Because really, for the most part, it's really about new users in new areas.
Additional Councillor Coulson, some questions and stuff?
Yeah, we almost needed like an agenda of topics to discuss as we go through this to streamline it. Regarding the planning group being the lead consultant, I may phrase this poorly, but a lot of the work in here is getting up to speed on current plans, policies, bylaws, reports and such. That's work that's been done. Coors has a pretty good handle on it. Even though I like that we go for tender on stuff, we actually approved Coors as our sole source engineer in a previous discussion. Is this the type of work where Coors is sole source to be the lead contractor on it, and then they hire out communication companies and such? Would that potentially be more economically advantageous?
Question to staff.
Yeah, good question to staff. Sorry.
Chair, it has its possibilities, it could be, because like you said, all the information is there, they have it all, and if they were to take the lead onto it, then they would probably look at a planning firm that would come in and do some of the other stuff as well, so you could do it both ways, I believe.
Has there been discussions with Coors on acting in that capacity?
Through your worship, our direction was to develop a water master plan in terms of reference and do it for a consultant. So that was our direction given. So that's as there's no argument with the concept that Councillor Coulson put forward. Our direction was to move in the way we did it.
There's nothing to prevent Coors from bidding on it.
No.
Councillor, is it in relation to?
It is, yeah, I agree, and that's a good question. I think in the process, because I personally want that Coors can put a request in for this proposal, and while they might take them less time to do step 1 than somebody else might be more efficient doing step 5 or 6, so it really comes down to costs. But I agree with it. It's a good point.
From my standpoint, one of the things I worry about with engineers is it becoming a technical exercise. No offense.
Isn't everything?
and so that's why, for me, the idea of at least seeing proposals from a broader range is to me a good exercise. Nothing against Rob and people at Coors. It's just, I said, I worry about the technical side. Councillor Colbert.
Well, on that point, with this, I think that some projects, it's clear that the engineering part of the exercise is the biggest one, but they're going to have a communications consultant or a planning consultant to be part of it. Other times it's the other way around, but you may have a situation where the planning consultant is the lead consultant, even though their part of the work isn't the biggest, but it's the one that's the most important and the one that people would see would be the planning consultant. So I think it can go either way. It really comes down to the proposal. We'll evaluate the proposal and look at the engineering credentials, experience, communication, et cetera, and we'll make a decision on which one we think is best. What 15% based on X and what half 10%.
But generally, the lead contractor consultant then charges a management fee for the sub-consultant for managing. So, if you've got someone who's farming out 3/4 of the work to someone else, it's not economically efficient because they're getting 20% of 3/4 of the work.
That's what the thing's all about.
Yeah, no, but just
Hopefully. Other questions, comments? Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think my comments overall are that I can see Councillor Colcott's approach is slightly different to the approach taken by staff in terms of order or priorities. I certainly like the idea of highlighting and really emphasising a communication strategy. I think it's really critical to this piece of work, and it can often be overlooked by people who are in the technical business, who are more interested in the nuts and bolts, and the touchy-feely social side of it is less, prominent for them. So I think we really need to emphasise that it's important to us that that's followed through. But generally, I think the terms of reference deliver on what we ask for. It's going to be, it's outlining a document that gives a broad strategy, a broad framework for us to make future decisions around water, the supply of water, the maintenance of the supply of water, the delivery of water down the road. And those decisions, a lot of those decisions won't be made instantly, but as soon as the report's on the desk. This is a bit like LCP in a way, but it's a piece that guides, is specific to water. So I support this in terms of its presentation. If there's anything missing, I can't see it because I don't think I have enough experience of writing these things. But it seems entirely reasonable to me. And whether you do it in one order or the other, I agree with the mayor, really doesn't make much else. As long as the content's there, that's what matters. Because each proponent that comes forward will bring their own approach anyway, and they'll have their own, they will identify their own approach and method of arriving at this, and one might be, more suitable than another.
Councillor Cole.
I don't fully agree with the last comment, because I think the way that, if we put an RFP out like this, there's a very good chance that council can come back and do it in this order, because this doesn't really dictate, but this way puts the emphasis, I think, where it needs to be, and it puts it in order so that you have the right information to take the next step. Like we've been doing, some other work here before we've done a needs analysis. Well, then when we do a needs analysis, we go back and change some of this stuff. So you should do the needs analysis first.
But I guess, if I might, like 5.1D, is that not where the needs survey is being done? Which is part one of it. Listen, my biggest challenge on that is, I'm going to call it a lack of emphasis on it. So if anything, what I would do is I would pull it as a separate with renumbering, like 5.1 is getting a lay of the land before I go talk to people, create a 5.2 that's development of communication strategy, 5.3 the needs and wants survey, and then from then on, continue on.
Well, I look at in the current draft, the phase 2 and 3, you're doing the needs and, well, I guess conditions, the preliminary assessment of the existing system before you figured out what the extensions would be. So you're going to look at the existing system first and then say, what do we need to add to it? Well, if you're adding to it, then you might have to come back and reassess the existing stuff to get water to the edge to be able to extend it. So, I mean, it is all here. I just think that logically and, particularly if you're going to be putting this out to the community to show them what's going to happen, like you say, first of all, emphasis has to be on what they're interested in, which is the public consultation and needs assessment. They don't care too much about the nuts and bolts, but what's that fight is.
Yeah.
And that it's something that, to me, would be much easier to explain if it was in the sequence that it would be undertaken.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I agree fully, because where I was trying to piece together what the consultant or consultants would be doing as I read through it, and when I got to the key deliverables, I got a little uncertain of exactly what we're looking for, because it talks for policy and bylaw recommendations, operation and maintenance strategies, and then capital improvements. This part needed some strengthening in my opinion. And when you go into the other sections of the document, yeah, you can extract it all, I think. But to me, this does a much nicer job in putting it forward. I'd also like to see us add some of these items strictly into the key deliverables section to spell out specifically what we're looking for.
Councillor.
I was going to say, I also have a problem with that. I think this can easily be retweaked and to accommodate this. I think we're going around and around on something that can be easily accommodated. And both are saying the same thing, so let's emphasize each of these points, make sure we've got the deliverables identified on what we want, and then let's put it out there. Then there's no confusion between whoever is bidding on the contract, what the community's looking for. Let's just, I think we're all saying the same stuff. We all want the same information. I'm more interested to know in how frequent does this come back to council to keep us updated and the community on what they're discovering after every phase, or, when do we get reporting back? Hopefully not at the end. Does it say that?
Your Worship, there's a, pardon me for flipping through this as we go, but what section? That's, if council refers to page 11, 7.5, presentation requirements. Staff has asked for, first of all, sub-day meeting presentations to committee or council, minimum, and we actually emphasize a minimum at that point for committee council meetings to present their findings, and meeting presentation to stakeholders a minimum, again, of 4 stakeholder meetings. That is different areas of the public, key stakeholders within those pieces of the public. So that's we understand that council. Given that council has endorsed the public participation policy, given that council has a very large emphasis on communication strategy, we very much understand that. And so what we want to see from the proponent is that the proponent understands how to work with a semi-rural community to figure out what water is. And they know that they need to get out in the community, they know they need to talk to all the members of the community, and they need to present that to council.
So just as a follow-up, I get that part, that they meet, they come back, they tell us what they care. But as you're going through and preparing the report and gathering the information, there's a big gap. So are we going to get, as they're working through each of these points, kind of an update as we're going after they're done meeting with the residents and finding out their needs? Now they're building this plan. Are we going to hear something before the end, or are we going to, or we just wait after the meetings to hear what they come up with?
Through your Worship, I believe that's what the 7.5 sub-A says, is that through the process, that council is going to be updated at minimum 4 times how this process is going. They're not just going to get as Councillor Hain is concerned about, a report dumped on their plate.
Throughout the whole process.
So throughout the process, the proponent will be expected to meet with council, minimum of 4 times.
Throughout the whole process. Okay. So I'm at the end.
Just for the information of council, the April 4th meeting is when we considered the Water Task Force terms of reference. The motion on the floor was to approve the task force and instructing staff to advertise. That motion was defeated. There's a follow-up motion that the committee of the whole recommends council instructs staff to prepare a report on terms of reference for the Water Master Plan and associated consultant. Okay, now staff will be looking for a recommendation from the committee. Councillor Wilson.
I have questions.
Let's do those first.
We got 2 hours. Yeah. I'm thinking Barry Manilow right now.
All right.
We got 2 minutes. So, it appears on a couple pages. The page 7, section 4D. The 20-year build-up. Question to staff, what's our vision of that? What's that mean, look like? What's our reference?
As in why the 20 year?
Well, what does a 20-year build-out look like? What will we use to determine that?
I'll take a crack at that. Originally I had the OCD build-out. So, we've, as staff, we've gone back and forth on it. And, the fact of the matter is we don't know exactly, when the OCP will accomplish build-out. The fact is, this exercise is proceeding ahead of the OCP. So rather than, we're getting into the chicken and egg discussion, we thought if we use a 20-year time frame, that gave us enough of a time frame for us to project out and ensure that the infrastructure that's put in the ground and ultimately put in the ground at the end of the day will satisfy the needs of the community over that period. So it's sort of our best guess as to what a reasonable time frame would be, recognizing, as was alluded to in discussions earlier, that we've got areas that are needing water debate. There are areas that have potential for development that could assist the cost of those areas, and through the iterative process, utilize thinking 20 years out, what is that going to look like? So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's sort of our best guess as to hit the target.
Yeah, partially, so 20 years is good, but in terms of the number of the growth, because Coors referenced, I think, more of a anticipated percentage growth over a period of time for the area. I think they use that in their projections.
They do.
Would they be using something similar? Would they be using, if we just say, if all the big areas got developed to their maximum wish?
That's correct. I mean,
what would we target for a number for them?
as we work through the exercise, we've got to use the best information that's available to us. And so when we project out growth, we'll look at different scenarios with respect to growth. A low growth rate being a certain percentage, a medium growth rate, and a high growth rate, right? And, over a 20-year period, you'll have years where you're not even hitting the minimum, and you'll have other years where you're hitting the maximum, but, the average over that. And so through the discussion with staff and the community, with the help of the consultant, we'll have to figure out what that magic number is and what the ultimate expected build-out will be over a 20-year period. Because we've had to go through that exercise with the DCC report that's coming to council shortly. We'll have to go through that exercise again when we do the OCP, right? And I'm not expecting that there'll be drastic changes in the assumptions because the studies are being done in close proximity to one another from a time perspective. But it's good that through these different exercises, we're constantly looking at what an appropriate growth average should be. And so by the time we actually get into the writing of the document, we may have a certain set of assumptions today, but 6 months from now, when we're putting the document together, there might be things that change and could have potentially affect that growth rate, given the projects that are potentially in the pipeline and the timing by the property owners when they want to bring those projects forward. So it doesn't really answer your question. It's sort of a work in progress to come up with that number. But at the end of the day, we're utilizing the best information available at that point in time.
Yeah. Mr. Spears.
And just to emphasize on that a bit, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but part of your question is we're going to have massive growth within the water system if we connect North Wind, South Wind, and like the Elm Road areas and stuff like that. It's going to be 40% growth, not the 2% that was used in Coors. And I think that we're going to have to look at that, as Frank was saying, as we move forward through this process. There is going to be times when we actually look at it and say, okay, well, this is going to be a chunk that we'll be together, we'll actually develop together, and it'll be that percentage, and then we'll have to try and plan for that in the future. So hopefully this whole process will have certain sections of the district kind of encompassed and say, okay, this is the plan, this is how we go about connecting this section of the district. Here's the steps to go forward to do that. So, and that will be looked at individually and on the growth as you talk.
Sorry, thank you. So, thank you. So do we see asking the kind of technical component then, looking at those 3 growth rates perhaps, or picking an average? How do we want to manage that?
Building on what Fred, for just kind of tweak something. So, when we talk growth, I think we're going to be clear in defining what we mean by growth. So there's overall growth of the community over the next 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. And when we're talking about an official community plan and the ultimate vision and build out for Lansville. But then there's also the growth of the system itself, right? So the system might expand by 40% because we're picking up existing residents, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the population of the community is growing rapidly. It just means that the system is expanding, right? The infrastructure is expanding to accommodate the current needs of the existing residents. So you know,
Surrey West.
But you can also get a cumulative effect there, right? And so it's kind of the natural growth due to putting more residents on the system, but then there's potential new builds which will grow the system. And so, you know, the water header going that way for 100 homes is a lot different than the water header going that way for 400 homes. If 20 years down the road there could be a development coming. So just trying to manage that, and then what guidelines the technical folks have that they're working toward to give us meaningful numbers.
yeah. And again, it comes back to the best information that we have, that we can provide consultants, as staff and as a community. You know, it comes back to the comment that Councillor COTW made with respect to understanding potential, for lack of a better term, infill development. You know, I mean, we've had inquiries, we've had discussions with various property owners, and so we've got a general sense as to what areas could certainly come online and what potential impact could be on the system from a cost perspective, and then certainly in terms of, you know, the design and size of the pipe that should be in the ground at the end of the day. And it's our duty to share that with the consultant. So that, you know, at the end of the day, we can provide the best information to council for them to make a decision moving forward. But I can't sit here and give you a specific answer today. I think it's a discussion that we have to have. And, you know, it'll be a bit of a moving target until we've got all the information.
Okay.
You and Mark are having all the kids.
Yeah. Go for it.
Mr. Spears again?
Well, just speaking from a technical point of view, a lot of the things when we're actually looking at installing any infrastructure, we look at the life of the infrastructure, life cycle cost basically. And if we figure that it can actually last 80 years, we try to think ahead and what would the community be like in 80 years? And we're not saying we put in these huge pipes to think there's going to be high rises and all that stuff. But in a community of this size, and then taking into account the historical nature of the community, we look at, okay, there may be properties that they're smaller than, you know, the average 2.5 acres or what hectare. So we kind of look at that overall and then go from there, trying to match the usage with the life cycle and the whole. It is technically, it's very difficult to do, because you got the engineers saying one thing, the planners saying the other, and I'm stuck in the middle.
Well, and it's also dependent on some decisions that we make or have to make. You know, fire flows is a big one that does not jump into your water pipe size, and some of that is a function of what we have to suggest or make a decision on is what our target's going to be for fire flow. So there's a lot of permutations to work through. And we have,
generally, we have the OCP to look at from that point of view as well when we're doing design systems, which would be, we would look at the water service area and then try to incorporate growth in that area to size the pipes for fire flows.
On those, recall back to when we had the discussion around whether or not to do the needs assessment separately in the OCP or separately in the water master plan. The idea was that by doing it this way, first of all, one of the key things, we don't want water to dictate or become the main emphasis of the OCP. So I think that's one reason to do it separately. The other thing is it can be done now in such a way that when the OCP starts to get to a certain point, this can feed into it. So this whole thing about knowing where water is going to go, who wants it, who needs it, etc., that can feed back in. So in a way, a water master plan is like an OCP for the water system. And so when you look at the OCP, you're planning some things to happen in 5 years and some might not happen for 20 or 25. But in the end, you've got a plan. And as staff have said, then you do, if we end up with, on average, low growth, this is how long it'll take. If it's medium, it'll take this long. If it's faster, it'll take less. So same thing with this. I mean, we're going to go through this process. There would maybe people that say, yes, we want water, and we look at all the things in this, best case scenario, et cetera. It's still going to cost them this much. They might say, well, we're not willing to pay that right now. For 5 years from now, they might come back and say, no, we're ready to pay that. Circumstances change. So Once again, I think it goes back to the earlier comments, that it gives us the tools to make informed decisions at the time, and we can't foresee the future.
More questions, Mr. Colson?
Yes, please. Page 9, section 5.4. There's a sentence there that says they'll develop a condition rating system that identifies and effectively prioritizes infrastructure condition. Can I ask for clarification on what we're looking for there? Through your staff. Second sentence.
Yep.
Oh, so that, shared through the committee. When we were putting that together, I was really trying to work with the client and identifying, are there any sort of, what are the gaps in our system, so to speak, and what are the priorities moving forward to ultimately accomplish, the vision of the water system. So at the time that decision was put forward, that was the intent, is to take, is there anything critical that we need today, and what are those items, and ultimately what are those costs associated with that.
Okay. So that's, okay, great. So that is more of a cost-benefit analysis of the options that are being looked at. It may or may not help. I had potentially one of my interpretations of that was like an asset management rating system where you're actually looking at the physical condition of the system. Just how I took it as I read through that one pass. So perhaps clarification or not.
Yeah, I think with the way it's written, it could probably do some clarification, but originally it was kind of to cover off what the needs were of the existing system in order to move the system forward to the outreaches, so and Elmar and stuff.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything further from council? Councilor Colson?
Page 10, 6.2. Probably a similar response to last anyways. That first sentence, focusing on extending life cycle function for the various water utility infrastructure systems. I'm looking for some clarification on the intent of that one.
Yeah, so again, it's, we're not asking the consultants to reinvent the wheel here. We're trying to build on the existing course report. And so again, through, if CORS isn't the selected proponent for this project, well, actually, even if they were, basically the exercise is, as we're working our way through, is there information that comes to light that will help us extend the life cycle of our infrastructure? Or are there other techniques that are out there that weren't available at the time that the course report was being prepared? So that's really the intent of that, is to ensure that we're not just static. We're constantly looking at how to build a better mousetrap.
Okay. The reinvent the wheel comment, I think, is important because, of course, spent a fair bit. Is it phase 1? I forget what phase of the report they did, but that was a good chunk of their work in one of the reports they did. So it'd be nice not to.
Yeah, and throughout the document, we make reference to the course report because we want to emphasize about there's a basis here. Right?
Yeah.
Let's build on that.
Okay, thank you.
Further?
Sure. 12D, the ranking weightings. My perspective, I was looking at this more from like an engineering group being the lead, not a planning, so this may not be applicable anymore, but to me 15% seemed high for working in a small community context. Well, but at the time I was thinking someone with the skills to do this type of work, it doesn't really matter the size of the community. If they've got the skills to do the work, so be it. However, I might talk myself out of this one, but if communications is that's one of the big deliverables we're looking at, there is a bit of a nuance for small community communications. But I thought 15% might have been too high on that particular one, and I thought shift some of it toward the understanding of the project and its objectives. Because to me, 10% seems a little bit low on that side of things.
Okay. Councillor Cole. So Cole,
Well, I want to continue with that. I mean, let's talk about this rating and make sure that, if we as a group want to make recommendations or direct staff to change it, then, but, having pointed that out, I think you're right. I mean, understanding the project objective is 10% is on the low side, I think. I agree. So I don't know whether we want to, go, 2020, over that, the next two or something like that.
Yeah, 2020, okay. Sir, if I can.
Craig?
I've done the last one.
Through your worship, just to give some context in understanding why 15% was put to the small community context. Having dealt with large projects and large developments in North Vancouver versus dealing with managing community interests in Williams Lake, it's a vastly different approach to how you promote and how you work with a rural versus urban. The resources, the technology, the ability to get out to people is fundamentally different. And the concern staff has is that somebody in an urban way approaches it in an urban way versus a rural way. And there is a fundamental difference in the research.
From my standpoint, recognizing the challenges in the previous developments, going back 20 odd years roughly, that understanding of the small community and to be more specific, kind of somewhat of a landfill mentality, to me is huge.
Which is a good.
Well, it is, most definitely. But you think back to the landfill project, the presentation, the individuals that they had doing that basically set fire to it.
Yep, I agree.
And it's because they came in from outside and said, we know what's good for you, was basically their approach. So to me, having a larger weight on that is important. So you get that value coming back, and it makes it very much a cooperative type aspect as opposed to potentially a competition. Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would suggest that understanding experience working in small community context and understanding of the projects and its objectives are kind of equally, should be equally weighted. I would suggest 15, 15, 25, 20 on those first four. Because 1 and 2 are very closely related to each other. The project and its objectives are directly related to the nature of the community in which it's being done. And that's why, there's conservative stable like that. And obviously reflecting what CEO McRae just said about understanding the nature of the community and the kind of project or projects that might result.
Okay.
So that's my 2 points.
Sorry, I had one other one to consider if we're going to redistribute weightings. The proposed overall fee, possibly too high of a weighting, because if we've set a budget, if someone understands the project and can meet our budget, are we good? So is 15% possibly a bit too high? So I thought maybe steal 5% from that and put it toward the item 2.
You realize we're micromanaging?
Well, no, but really, the thing is, my concern is if someone doesn't understand it, what the objectives and deliverables are, all the other stuff is meaningless.
Fair enough, fair comment. I admit, I am surprised that the one related to the dollars would be one that you would think would take some of the emphasis on, but we're feeling the lot. Mr. McRae.
Through your worship, this is the fun of the operation stuff, is you can have fun all day playing the to it.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like council to understand, or not understand, but kind of see it from the way staff is seeing it, which is the experience working in a small community, understanding the project and the references are going to be, as Councillor Mears kind of alluded to, is going to lump into a pretty similar piece of what you're looking for. So that's almost 35% at that point that's going to be swung into the sociological kind of behavioral review. The other pieces are tied into the technical exercise minus the fee piece. So if you look at it, it's almost a 40-40 with a 20 on the back end. So if that makes any sense. So that's playing this right out. So looking at it this way, if you take these categories and just put them into lump, whether it's mathematical or sociological, they're pretty much split evenly.
So, we change it or what? Any further, Councillor Colton?
Move this along.
I'm going to put another plug in for the roadmap I mentioned way back in the beginning. One of the deliverables I'd like to see some sort of roadmap, flowchart, whatever you want to call it, that kind of blocks out these key steps that we're looking for. Key decisions, the steps on the sheet from Councillor Colclough I think are good. A flowchart, roadmap, very handy in my experience, and that would be nice to have on paper.
Councillor Colton.
Just clarify, are you talking about a roadmap for going through the process, or a roadmap for once we've gone through the process and how we move forward from there?
Deliverable from the process.
From the process on?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just need to elaborate a little bit. So if I understand that correctly, then it was, we've done our water master plan, we've done the OCD process, and we're going to now unfold all this. Here are the next steps to take.
Yeah. Rather, what will be in paragraph form, if it could be graphically represented in some fashion, I think is quite helpful.
Even a decision-making matrix that would help us say, okay, we've got this 2 or 3 neighborhoods that all want to be first. What's our process going to be to figure out which one? I mean, if they're all willing to pay for the whole thing themselves, then we can all go at the same time. That's not an easy case. I like that.
Staff. Oh, sorry. Councillor Swain.
Anyway, do you have a question?
No.
Okay. Yeah, so, being quiet over here, but, so my question is through the chair's staff. Just has to do with the scope of the scope of work and the talk of expansion. Given the fact that we are a small community and a lot of the success of our expansion will hinge on developers giving us amenities. Will this water master plan speak to that?
Through your worship, you just ran away.
Back to where?
Oh, you are? Perfect. Okay. Through your worship, that's one of the things the water master plan has to consult or contemplate. Sorry, is that it can't hang its hat on it because it's not something that's come to fruition, but at the same time, it has to contemplate different scenarios. So that's one of the things that staff will consult after goes through as far as an exercise.
So that will be an exercise that we undertaking? Because it's not really any business.
We have to, again, given the best information that's available, they have to take that into account. And when they're looking at different scenarios, that's part of the consideration. What if the cost of extending the pipe to certain areas? Well, what's that cost if there's infill development between versus no infill development? So that's all part of the discussion process that will happen.
And then a follow-up to that, right? Yeah. So a follow-up. So if we are going to be relying on developers to do these amenity contributions, then will there be a definite survey to the rest of the community to make sure that these amenities are where they want them to be? In terms of the new rec center versus pipe for the rest of the community.
Through worship, and probably have Frank jump in after to clarify what I will say. I I would caution a comment on reliance on. We have to be able to show as staff what the world looks like with simply the community putting a water system forward. I hate to use the word reliant because we have no control over what happens with other pieces. So a better thing is looking at that perspective on whether there would be contributions. If there's not, then we still need to figure out how to get water to the entire community and what that cost is going to be. To do an assessment on whether the residents would like an amenity of a rec center versus a reservoir versus that's well outside of the scope of this. That would be something that council would need to have that discussion as far as amenities. I don't believe we have an amenity policy that dictates for development at that point, so that may be something the future council wishes to discuss and maybe direct the staff to look at.
It's slightly off topic for this, but it's a great question and discussion I think we have to have, because I'm going to ramble a bit. We go through the OCP review process, we come up with the official community plan, and then big development comes. We, in a way, toss that to the side, and we look then at the amenity bump that we get to put toward stuff. Then we go for a public engagement process because it requires an OCP amendment, which we've already developed, to make that lawful, I guess, or valid, allowable. So yeah, there's a lot of steps in that, and quite often it seems to get short-circuited on if that development is going to be allowed to happen, where that money will be targeted. It's a great discussion in the future.
To you, staff, two things. One is good point on the amenity list, and I do recall hearing at some point in the past staff had started the development.
To the chair.
Yeah.
Probably about 8 years ago, there was some beginnings of amenities policy, and staff had started going through the list, but then it was
On the priority.
it wasn't high on the priority list.
So another question, question to the staff is, with an amenity from a developer, they propose the amenity, correct?
That's correct. Officially, they propose the amenity to the community, but certainly there's dialogue that occurs between the developer and staff to understand what that should be. Because one of the fundamental things when you go through a rezoning process, as the property owner and the applicant, the person making the application for rezoning, you have to look at it from the municipality's perspective as well. Why should, I think the fundamental question is, why should the municipality consider the application and ultimately approve it? What's in it for the municipality at the end of the day? And so if what you're proposing is not adequate to the municipality, there's nothing to say that the municipality has to accept or approve the rezoning, right? And with respect to Council Swain's question, take it one step further. Today discussions around provision of water, and I think everybody recognizes that we need definitely infrastructure. But that's one component. When you consider a rezoning application, each application is considered on its own merits. And the provision of infrastructure could be one amenity, but it could be provision of infrastructure plus provision of green space plus whatever. Right? I mean, ultimately, it's got to be, want to come to a resolution where it's fair for both parties. But it definitely has got to be something there for municipality, when considering a rezoning application.
Back again to staff. But there are advantages for the community council to develop an amenities list to guide or provide potential developers with options, I guess.
Yes, one of the advantages of developing the the amenities list, if you will, it provides some certainty for not only the developer, but for the community as well. And so it's not a true, it's not just, you're not making a deal every time. When the developer comes in, they know these are the priorities for the community, and here's the wish list, and how are you going to try to help fulfill those particular items. So it's a great tool, provides more certainty for all parties moving forward.
Well, yeah, certainly, and clarity too, because ultimately it comes down to residents deciding if they want to allow more density than what the OCP says in exchange for some basket of goods, money. When the lawyer was here at Council 1.0, 20% was apparently the lift number that a small community could get for that, what they call it, the lift. So the market value, where it currently is to where it could go if the application was approved, 20% comes in some form of amenity.
The city of Vancouver is way higher.
80%. 80%.
I wasn't going to go with them. Okay. Any other discussion or questions?
Do we need some motions on some of these items, or have you got a punch list of items?
Through your worship, council has a couple of options. Staff has heard council loud and clear. I think staff has a pretty good track record with listening to council from what they've asked for and recreating that and moving it forward. So should council wish to approve or modify and endorse the plan as directed, that would be one of staff's recommendations. The other one is that, which is not on the alternatives, that council can defer this matter to the next committee of the whole meeting. Staff can come back in 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
16.
And the 16th, come back with the request for proposal as amended. Council can have another kick at it and be assured that staff has followed direction and go from there. It's really council's choice at that point.
I would think that I concur that staff have a good track record of listening and making changes. The only area that I might take you guys to a little emphasis on the percentages. We want to just maybe tie a bow around that where we either say yes, we'd like to change it, or leave it to staff or leave it the way it is. But ultimately, I think I don't see any reason why we can't have this be amended if it comes back to council rather than wait 3 weeks for the committee. Discussion on that, or
I wouldn't mind seeing the revisions just as another pass through to process it in its revised entirety.
I think we need to know about it in council.
Or to council meeting, sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, well, instead of waiting, going to a meeting.
Oh, I see. Then going to council. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so what do we got?
I'll make a motion that the committee will recommend, let's see, that's probably better. Read the staff. The process then would be to direct staff to make changes as discussed and have the
document brought forward to council.
The council.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Okay.
Motion, and there's a second from Councilor Hand. Discussion. Is that a hand, Councilor Hand, or?
Scratching my head.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Any further on the water master plan? Hearing none, public participation.
Hearing none.
I have something to say. Sorry about John Moody. This is going to sound probably, after listening to you all, thank you very much, a little disconcerting maybe to you. But as a public person and not really understanding all the mechanics, I noticed on 3.0 the timeline. So it starts July 5th, assuming that we have someone make proposals. And to be completed by March the 31st, 2017. So my question, if I'm allowed to ask it, is what happens after you get the plan? It comes to council, I presume, for approval of the plan. Then will council actually act on it, and will we then be looking at doing something for the residents? Is it or water connections? Is that sort of a magic date that we can count on so that discussion of what we're doing with water will finally be made?
Well, the plan itself will lay out the flow chart, the roadmap, whatever we want to use for it. So there would be, at least for my part, there'd be an expectation, now that we have the direction, now we know the needs, now we know what infrastructure needs to be done, that from then on, almost from then on, it would be an administrative or operational task to a great extent from that point on. Mr. McGrath?
Through your worship, this is very much an administrative document. Once council releases that document, staff move on and provide the information through the steps that's laid out through the consultant. Once that report comes to council would be endorsing or not endorsing or whatever avenue in regards to the information. After that, it is purely administrative. Staff take care of the nuts and bolts after that.
So, therefore, there doesn't need to be any further discussion that we've been having for the last years and years. The administration says, okay. Yeah, you have been around for a decade. But you know what I'm trying to say is that now it's just staff will just do whatever the plan says and it'll go forward and subject to, of course, financing.
That's where the biggest aspect of the financial side.
And subject to whether we have water.
Well, that's true too.
We don't know if we have water.
Well, yeah, but those questions would be answered for that final document there to a certain extent.
Yeah,
or
to
to
some
a great
extent.
And there will still be decisions on that document. It's not it's like building a house, away you go get it done. There's still council discussions, decisions, and water sources, economics. There's still things unfold.
Yes, sir.
Can I add, but what it does is it gives the residents clarity about the process and how the decisions are made and why they're made. So that's the first step, is give them a process. So when a certain neighbor, at the end, a certain neighborhood says, well, we're still jumping at the bit, we want to go, well, the process is laid out, then we can go through the steps.
Councilor Hayes?
Which will involve local service area referendums, right? There's no other process.
Further public participation. There was a motion to adjourn by Councilor Colson. Colclough, seconded by Councilor Weir. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.